Hello and welcome to the Chop Shop. My name is Dion Tucker. In this video, I want to pay tribute to one of the masters of jazz trombone that we just lost. That's Mr. Curtis Fuller. So what I want to share with you in this video is Curtis Fuller's influence on me as a trombonist. The first time I heard him, I was about 15 years old, and his sound and his way of playing just stuck with me ever since. So I want to share some of my favorite recordings of his. I want to look at a few transcriptions that I actually wrote out back when I was in high school and just talk about his overall influence on music and the trombone community. But before I jump into that, I want to thank everybody out there who's been supporting the channel. If you haven't done so yet, go ahead and click that subscribe button and hit the notification bell so you can get a heads up on whenever I put out a new video. The first time I heard Curtis Fuller, I was 15 years old, and I was attending a trombone clinic at the University of North Florida that was being led by Vince Gardner. Now, Vince played two recordings for us there. The first one was J.J. Johnson's The Trombone Master. That was my first time really hearing J.J., especially play that way. And the second recording he played was New Trombone by Curtis Fuller. Now, I had never even heard of Curtis Fuller up to this point, but I was absolutely mesmerized by this recording. Now, a couple of things that jumped out to me when I first heard Curtis's playing was his ideas. They were very simple and easy to digest. And it made me feel like, hey, I can play this. I can try and learn some of this stuff. So actually, some of my first solos that I transcribed were Curtis Fuller solos. Another thing that I noticed was his ease in articulation. The way that he was able to articulate his different lines and phrases was so flawless and smooth. It was something that I just really wanted to emulate. So I started to dive deeper and deeper into his playing. Now, in addition to being one of the most musical and swinging trombonists of all time, Curtis was a master technician. And the first time that I heard his technique on display was a recording called Meet the Jazztet. The front line was Art Farmer, Benny Golson, and Curtis Fuller. When I heard this recording, my whole mind in life just shifted. I couldn't believe, first of all, the sound of the group, and hearing that instrumentation together was amazing. But hearing Curtis play through some of these songs and play some of these lines, I just didn't even think it was possible to play the trombone that fast. As I've been reading through some of the amazing stories that people have been sharing since Curtis has passed, I've learned a little bit more about him as a person. And I saw an interesting interview with Benny Golson and Curtis where they were talking about the Jazztet. And Benny Golson mentioned that Curtis came up with the name for the Jazztet. Now, from other interviews that I read of people like Steve Davis and Randy Brecker, apparently Curtis was a wordsmith and he liked to use wordplay quite a bit. So when the Jazztet was first formed, I guess this was one of their first performances, the promoter came up and said, hey, what's the name of your group? And they didn't really have a name yet. So they said, we'll get back to you. And they sat down and they thought about it. And I guess Curtis said, well, hey, it's a sextet and we're playing jazz, so why not call it the Jazztet? Now, this was a story that I saw on YouTube, and I saw Curtis and Benny Golson play it, so I think that's a reliable source to say that he came up with the name of the group, the Jazztet. Now, another thing that struck me as a young man, when I would get a copy of these recordings, I was getting them in the format of a CD, and the album covers all looked really cool. I remember the first time I saw the New Trombone album cover, and Curtis has these on a train track, like he's waiting for a train, and he has this big long trombone case. I remember I wanted to have a long trombone case just because it looked cool in that picture. Similar to that Jazztet record, it was just something about seeing these guys made it look like, hey, this is something that I absolutely want to do. Now, Curtis did a lot of recording, especially in the 1950s. And I know an album that many of us were introduced to Curtis on was John Coltrane's album called Blue Train, which is an absolute piece of jazz history. If you haven't heard it, make sure you check out Blue Train. Now, through my obsession with Curtis Fuller is how I wound up finding out about Art Blakey and the Jazz Messengers. And some of the albums, the first albums that I got was Caravan. Oh my God. When I heard Art Blakey and the Jazz Messengers Caravan album, life changed. Ugetsu, life changed. Three Blind Mice, life changed. Free for All. I mean, this is just classic jazz records, all of which Curtis Fuller was a part of and a key contributor to. If you haven't heard any of those records that I just named, make sure you check them out as soon as possible. As a young trombone student, I was big into transcribing. I still love transcribing. And what I would do after I learned the solo by ear is I would write it down. Now, not only did this help me understand what was going on with the changes, but it helped me get my rhythmic dictation together. It helped my reading a lot because I had to write all this stuff down. So I had 4 Curtis Fuller solos that I wrote out. The first one is Blue Lawson from the new Trombone album, 1957 Prestige. I also wrote out one called Seeing Red, that's from Curtis Fuller and Red Garland. I wrote out Mox Nix, which is from Meet the Jazztet album, and I wrote out Janine, which is from the Curtis Fuller Volume 3 recording. Now, all of these solos, I spent a good amount of time learning, getting it under my fingers, trying to get all the inflections together, and I'm glad that I did, and I'm glad I wrote it down because I was able to dig it out of my music crate, and I still have some of this stuff. I think it's really cool to kind of share this part of the journey because, you know, it goes to show we all take this music in different ways. We all have different approaches to how we go about learning it. And this was just my process at the time, but it'll show you how much respect and how deep I was into Curtis Fuller's playing. So let's look at some of the licks and vocabulary that Curtis Fuller made part of the language of jazz trombone. I'm gonna grab my horn and demonstrate a few of the licks that I still probably use in my playing, and I know all of us have taken little bits and pieces of Curtis's language and made it our own. Let's check out what some of those things are. So the first thing I want to point out about Curtis Fuller's playing is the feel that he puts to his eighth notes. It's very unique and distinct to him. Now, it's something that's coming almost from like the shuffle rhythm on the drum. So like a da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da. But he just had a way of putting it right in the pocket and making it sound really swinging. It was just a more dotted 8/16 16th kind of shuffle feel. But when you heard that, you absolutely knew that it was Curtis Fuller. Now, another thing that was unique to Curtis's style of playing was the way that he used the triple tongue, especially when he would use it like repetitively on one note, but then play some blues at the end of it. Something like That's so Curtis Fuller. And when you heard that, it was such a distinct sound and such a unique way of him playing that you automatically knew it was him. Now, there's a certain lick in trombone vocabulary that I know a lot of us have played over time. I stole it verbatim. I was probably 15 or 16 years old when I heard Curtis Fuller first play this. All right, I took that and I probably played it every time I got a chance to play a B-flat 7 chord. What I didn't know until later on was that that A-flat da, 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 was played in first position. So it sounded a little bit different. It would sound more like this. It makes it much easier and it lays a lot better. So it was a little trick that I learned that Curtis used in his technique. Now, Curtis's technical facility was surpassed by no one. And I remember the first time I heard a CD called Imagination, the Curtis Fuller Sextet. And they played a song on there. It's a blues and it's called Bang Bang. And the tempo is literally 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. Curtis Fuller plays a solo on there, and it's going by so fast. When I was a kid, I couldn't even believe that the trombone could be played that fast. But slowly but surely, I started working up just the first chorus. Now, my trombone teacher at the time, Dana Tebow, was very encouraging and actually really helped me learn this first chorus. So I'm gonna try and play it now. I can't play it at the tempo that Curtis played it, but I'm gonna just try and run that first chorus for you. And this is something that I actually learned back in high school when I was around 16, maybe 17 years old. 1, 2, 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 1, 2. Like I said, I could only play the first chorus. I can still only play the first chorus. One of these days I'm gonna sit down and figure out probably goes at it 15, 20 choruses. It's absolutely amazing. And Curtis Fuller set the standard. He set the bar for me as far as the technical ability and what can actually be done on the jazz trombone. It was just a whole new thing that absolutely blew my mind. I know that we're all coping with this loss in a different way, but I want to send a big condolence to his family and to everybody out there who was affected by the loss of the amazing Curtis Fuller. It's definitely something that hit home to me, but I've been putting on his recordings lately, and the biggest thing that it does, it brings joy to me. It made me think and feel like I went home. It was like going home. If you haven't been home in a long time, sometimes when you go home, you just get reminded of where you come from. And listening to Curtis Fuller's playing for me reminds me where I come from. I want to thank everybody for checking out this video. Let me know what kind of influence Curtis Fuller had on you. What are some of your favorite recordings? Did you ever meet him? Do you have a good Curtis Fuller story? Go ahead and drop it in the comments below. I would love to hear them, and I'd just love to learn even more about this amazing musician. Rest in peace, Brother Curtis, and I'll see you next time at the Chop Shop.